6 p.m. and you're watching TSN Online. Welcome. Subscribe to our channel, hit like, ring the bell, and I'll tell you about the main highlights of the day. Due to shelling, there are power outages in several regions of Ukraine at once. The most difficult situation is in the Sumy and Chernihiv regions, according to Ukrenergo. Emergency repair work is ongoing, but the situation is complicated by the fact that electricity consumption has increased across the country due to the cold weather. In Chernihiv, which was struck by the Russians, energy workers are implementing hourly blackout schedules, and the water utility is partially powered by autonomous sources. Hospitals, municipal facilities, and social institutions are switching to generators. Schools will remain remote until the end of the week, and kindergartens will not be operating today. Konotop and the Shoska district of Sumy region are not only partially without electricity, but also without water. The Russians launched more than 24 Shaheds at the city and also damaged the railway infrastructure. Trains stopped, some stood in the fields for several hours. More than 300 passengers had to be evacuated by bus. The contact network was restored in the morning, so train service has already resumed. Due to the strike on the substation in Slavutych, the Chernobyl Nuclear Power Plant was without power for 3 hours in the Kiev region. The new shelter, which isolates the fourth power unit and prevents the release of radioactive materials, was left without power. Slavutych itself was also without electricity. However, power has now been restored to critical infrastructure facilities, as well as to schools, shops, pharmacies, and gas stations. And in Odesa, about 50,000 subscribers in one of the city's districts are still without electricity. The occupiers also struck the railway depot, and the glow from the fire could be seen at night from distant parts of the city. A train driver from the affected train was injured. A resident of a neighboring private house was also injured. Everything depends on Trump's decision. The president of Ukraine, during a conversation with the press, confirmed that he had spoken with his American counterpart about the transfer of long-range missiles. Volodymyr Zelensky arrived in Copenhagen, where he is participating in the 7th summit of the European political community. The head of state has already met with the Danish and Norwegian prime ministers, discussed cooperation, and expressed gratitude for their support. At the summit, one of the main topics is the recent violations of the airspace of Denmark, Poland, Romania, Norway, and Estonia. Volodymyr Zelensky emphasized that the experience of Ukrainian specialists and Ukrainian technologies should become an important part of the European Union's drone wall initiative. The president of Ukraine reminded that the root of all problems is the war waged by Russia, and that a way to weaken Moscow would be the 19th package of sanctions and a refusal of Russian energy resources.
It is also necessary to introduce additional sanctions against the captains and crews of the so-called shadow fleet, as well as against the owners of the respective companies. There, it is necessary to consider the possibility of imposing sanctions on Russian oil terminals and the rest of their infrastructure on the mainland. We must strongly support the crucial initiative of the President of the United States to effectively stop Europe's continued purchase of Russian oil and gas. Nero Resources, the USA, and other partners are capable of covering this deficit on the European market.
France is taking a stand against the Russian shadow fleet. Law enforcement in the country have detained 2 crew members of a tanker believed to be part of the secret Russian flotilla. The high-profile detention was announced by French Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu. The vessel sailing under the flag of Benin, which, by the way, is on the sanctions list, has been anchored off the Atlantic coast of France for several days. Paris has launched an investigation into possible violations by the ship. According to media reports, it may be linked to the flights of unidentified drones over Denmark. After all, this very vessel recently passed near the Danish coast. The ship has a long history connected to the illegal transportation of Russian oil. Last December, it changed its name, and this spring it was detained by Estonia, which eventually released the vessel. When they don't have their own, they take from their neighbors. The occupier has started importing gasoline from Belarus more actively, as reported by the Ukrainian Foreign Intelligence Service. This happened after numerous Ukrainian drone strikes on oil refineries. Despite statements from Russian officials, Ukraine did cause a fuel shortage. So the occupier began actively buying gasoline and diesel from Belarus. These are produced by local refineries using Russian oil. In total, from July to September, Russia purchased almost 100,000 tons of petroleum products. While this isn't a huge amount for the needs of the aggressor country, imports from Belarus have been steadily increasing over the past 2 months. In fact, the largest shipments were made in September. But the oil sector isn't the only one. The occupier and its ally are cooperating in the military sphere. One of the Belarusian defense enterprises has signed a contract with the Tula cartridge plant. According to Ukrainian intelligence, officially the parties claim the cooperation is only for civilian products. But in reality, both countries are trying to conceal their cooperation in the defense sector. The United States will share intelligence with Ukraine for strikes on energy infrastructure within Russian territory. The Wall Street Journal reported this, citing sources in the US presidential administration. According to the publication, Donald Trump signed the corresponding authorization, and the United States also asked its NATO partners to provide similar assistance to Kyiv. However, the intelligence service is still awaiting written instructions from the White House, an unnamed official told journalists. Washington had previously shared intelligence data, but now it will specifically concern the pipeline processing facilities of the station that generate energy. The idea is to reduce the revenues from energy imports, which the Kremlin spends on the war. The US is also deciding whether to supply Kyiv with long-range missiles such as Tomahawk, Barracuda, and others. No decisions have been made yet, but these developments, combined with more powerful weapons, could potentially inflict greater damage on Russian energy and exhaust its air defense system. This is stated in a publication by the Austrian Journal. Viktor Orbán refused to name Russia as the greatest threat to Europe. The Hungarian Prime Minister once again made a series of scandalous statements regarding the war in Ukraine. In particular, he unexpectedly stated that Europe together is stronger than Russia, since it has a larger population and a bigger economy, and therefore he believes that Moscow cannot be called the greatest threat to the EU. The Hungarian Prime Minister also once again spoke out against Ukraine's accession to the European Union. This time he openly revealed his motives. He said that in that case the EU would have to pay money to Ukraine, and Budapest does not like that. As an alternative for our country, Orbán suggested a strategic partnership. Orbán's position once again drew criticism from the Polish Prime Minister, who has a completely different view of the situation. Donald Tusk recalled his discussion with Orbán, who ignores the war in Ukraine and emphasized that the real question is who in this war does not hear the suffering. And the position of Poland, NATO, and Europe is well known. Unfortunately, so is Hungary's position. High-level trolling. Prime Minister Orbán forced Emmanuel Macron to apologize. The video of the episode was shown by the Azerbaijani outlet Van News. At the summit of the European political community, the French leader was speaking with the president of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev, when he heard an unexpected remark from the Albanian prime minister. You have to apologize. With a serious expression, the Albanian prime minister joked to Macron that he, quote, did not congratulate Albania and Azerbaijan on establishing peace. Not long ago, US President Donald Trump stated several times that he had ended the war and reconciled Azerbaijan and Albania. But in reality, he just confused Albania with Armenia. At first, Macron was very surprised, but then he got the joke and did apologize, and all three officials started laughing. As they say, the comments are mutual.
You have to apologize? Right here in front of us! Because you didn't congratulate us on the establishment of peace between Azerbaijan and Albania, which President Trump talked about. Forgive me.
An explosion in a residential building in Lviv. The cause was a gas air mixture leak in one of the apartments located on the first floor of a 3-story building. An elderly woman who lived there was injured and taken to the hospital. As a result of the explosion, the walls in neighboring apartments were damaged and the windows were blown out. The residents were temporarily relocated. The gas supply to the building was shut off. The elimination of the consequences of the bad weather in Odesa will take at least a week. This was stated by the Deputy Prime Minister for the Restoration of Ukraine, Oleksiy Kuleba, who is currently in the city affected by the disaster. At the moment, the causes of the tragedy are being investigated here. In particular, whether it was possible to avoid human casualties is being examined. Meanwhile, in Odesa, the number of people killed as a result of the bad weather has risen to 10. Neighbors discovered the body of a 90-year-old woman in one of the flooded houses. Today, a day of mourning has been declared in Odesa region for the victims.
A stream of dirty water turned this once flourishing alley into a mixture of mud and debris. The water destroyed everything in its path. It smashed concrete fences, tore up asphalt, and broke trees. At its deepest point, the water level reached 5 meters. A family of 5 found themselves trapped in their own home. The basement floor where they lived was submerged.
We had basically a security room and a garage, and the doors, because of the amount of water, slammed shut. I think, unfortunately, those people died. I think that since the water started rising so quickly, the doors got jammed, and with such a large amount of water, it was impossible to open them.
Another 4 people drowned when the torrent of water swept through the city streets. A special commission is now investigating whether the tragedy could have been prevented.
It's clear that the city system couldn't handle the volume of rainfall that occurred. And here, accordingly, we need to understand why this happened. As of today, the work to eliminate the consequences is still ongoing. In fact, I'll say more, it's only just beginning and will continue for at least another week.
City officials claim that the downpour was extremely powerful and that no sewage system is capable of handling and quickly passing through such an amount of rainwater in such a short period of time.
We prepared the stormwater drainage system for the expected downpour. According to the Meteorological Service, on September 30th, 94 millimeters of precipitation fell, while the monthly norm for September is 42 millimeters of precipitation. So we can see that in just one day, we received more than 2.5 times the usual monthly amount of precipitation. Accordingly, the stormwater drainage system simply could not withstand such a load.
But many say that the city's sewage system has long been unable to cope even with lighter rains. They talk about the ill-conceived, chaotic development of the city, where drainage holes are clogged and channels are blocked with concrete. They also point to the lack of green spaces and open ground, which are capable of absorbing water.
And they have their own concerns, their own problems. We just keep pouring asphalt over everything there in Zamoria.
We've been complaining about this storm drain for a long time. It's either been dug up somewhere or buried, and then people ran sewer pipes through it. I understand that some kind of digging was done somewhere. And we've been complaining for 2 years already. Commissions and TV crews have come to them, but it's still the same.
Could the loss of human life have been avoided? This is the main question that a special commission is trying to answer. Why did the warning system fail? Why did some people receive a timely warning about the serious danger, but schools were not switched to remote learning?
A year ago, I had already reached out and I sent letters to the City Council because this issue has come up before regarding the regulation of the operation of collectors and storm drains, as the Commission is now studying.
Almost 300 private houses and nearly 400 apartment buildings were affected by flooding. Hundreds of cars were submerged. They cannot be restored. Local businesses are also counting their losses. Almost all shops and cafes on the ground floors were flooded and the goods were ruined.
An urgent compensation program for lost property needs to be created. The city has also set up a hotline for people to call. And one of the key indicators of overcoming the consequences of this tragedy is, accordingly, a decrease in calls to this hotline and the start of compensation payments.
For the third day in a row, rescuers have been tirelessly pumping out water. From the basement floors, the water is being pumped out into the courtyard. More than 15,000 cubic meters of water have been pumped out just from the underground parking lots. Fortunately, there were no shellings during these hours because for many city residents, the parking lots serve as makeshift shelters. They are pumping water out of the shelters. 42 bomb shelters were flooded. Night from Friday to Saturday, meteorologists are once again forecasting heavy downpours in Odesa. In order for them not to become devastating for the city, all services must manage to eliminate the consequences of the previous disaster and prepare to face the new one. Polina Chevnyayeva, Ivan Savchenko, TSN 1+1.
2 people were killed, others wounded, and the attacker was shot dead. During the attack in Manchester, UK, the terrorist rammed a crowd with a car near a synagogue and then started a stabbing spree. The attacker was neutralized by the police. His identity and motives are currently being established. He chose the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, Yom Kippur, to attack the synagogue. Due to the terrorist attack, the British Prime Minister hastily left the summit in Copenhagen. Keir Starmer returned to London and from there announced the strengthening of security measures. Additional police forces are being deployed across the country to ensure the protection of synagogues and the Jewish community. Ledonurana 1+1. Our media group joined the traditional and charitable campaign as part of the Power of Blood project. The blood collection is being conducted by the Blood Center of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Therefore, all the collected material is promptly sent to stabilization points near the front line or to intensive care units to save Ukrainian soldiers. Today, the Plusivtsi, with their donations, gave a chance to save the lives of at least 80 soldiers.
A male nurse with the call sign Znakar is chatting with an employee from the 1+1 finance department.
No, I've donated blood for many years, and it's absolutely not scary at all.
His task is to distract and relieve the donor's tension. Stress narrows the veins, and that makes donation more difficult. However, the biggest problem for military medics is the shortage of blood. Znakar has been evacuating the severely wounded from the front line for 3 years, so he constantly faced shortages at the front.
Blood can reach the stabilization unit or the hospital right at the position where it is needed most and first when it is urgently required. There is simply no way, no equipment, no possibility to deliver it.
To increase the chances of survival for wounded soldiers, the Armed Forces Blood Center conducts mobile blood drives. Among the regular active donors are employees of 1+1. Victoria Pismena is already on the couch for the 12th time. She left editing the story for the sake of something more important.
The power of blood is that I can give someone else a chance at life. And maybe my blood has already saved the lives of many guys.
Alexander Batalov is a living example of why it is necessary to donate blood. In 2023, together with his comrades, he was driving Russian occupiers out of the forest and came across a minefield. The soldier lost his leg, but thanks to the doctors and donated blood, he survived.
It's important to show how blood donation helps and saves lives, because I might not have had this life, but I do. Thanks to the fact that someone donated blood back then, they gave it to me. And that's why I'm here today.
The intensity of fighting in Ukraine is steadily increasing. Daily air attacks with missiles and Shaheds only increase the need for donated blood. Most deaths in the war are due to blood loss, as doctors note. However, modern technologies make it possible to perform transfusions even in the trenches. That's why volunteers and military medics have joined forces in the Power of Blood project.
The project covers absolutely all needs, starting from blood collection to storage and examination. That is, we are focused on renovating medical equipment in the blood center. And to date, in a year and a half of work, equipment worth 35 million hryvnias has been delivered. And all of it is already working.
All the collected material is promptly sent to field stations near the front lines or to intensive care units to save Ukrainian soldiers. This time, the Plus team donated about 20 liters of blood. And that's a plus in saved lives, at least for 80 Ukrainian defenders. Ihor Bondarenko, Roman Sishchenko, TSN 1+1.
That's all from me for now. More news at 7:30 p.m. on our website. Be active in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe, like, hit the bell, and see you next time.